The forgotten nation in the Bible, the mysterious mission of the God-chosen Philippines. Have you ever wondered if your country is mentioned in the Bible? Could a small nation in the East carry a divine mission from God Himself? While it may seem unlikely, ancient scriptures hold mysteries that could change the way we see the world. Imagine a land of over 7,000 islands, described in prophecy thousands of years ago, a place overflowing with gold, believed to be the legendary treasure of King Solomon, a people with unwavering faith, spreading God's light across the world. This is not just a coincidence. We are talking about the Philippines. The Bible speaks of distant lands in the east, islands where the name of the Lord will be glorified. Some scholars and historians believe these descriptions align with the Philippines, a nation rich in natural resources and spiritual devotion. Could this be the long-lost land of Ophir, where Solomon's ships once sailed in search of pure gold? Even today, more than 10 million Filipinos work across the globe, carrying their faith with them, strengthening Christian communities in unexpected places. Is this simply migration, or is it part of a greater divine plan? This story may challenge everything you thought you knew. Stay until the end to uncover a truth that will leave you speechless. The forgotten prophecy. Do the islands of the East hold a divine mission? When we think about biblical prophecy, our minds often gravitate toward Israel, the Middle East, or even Europe. But what if we've been overlooking a nation that fits a key description in the scriptures? What if the Philippines, a country largely dismissed in biblical discussions, actually holds a divine mission foretold thousands of years ago? One of the most intriguing biblical references is found in Isaiah 24:15. Therefore in the east give glory to the Lord, exalt the name of the Lord, the God of Israel, in the islands of the sea. This verse doesn't just mention the East, it specifies islands, a rare and deliberate reference in biblical texts. Throughout the Bible, the word island does not always refer to small land masses, surrounded by water, as we understand it today. Instead, it often symbolizes distant lands, separate yet significant places where the knowledge of God would eventually spread. This raises a fascinating question. Could the Philippines, an archipelago of over 7,000 islands, be the very region Isaiah was referring to? When considering geography, the Philippines is uniquely positioned. As the largest predominantly Christian nation in Asia, it stands out in a region dominated by Buddhism, Hinduism, and Islam. Over 86% of Filipinos identify as Christian, the vast majority of them being Roman Catholic. This alone makes the Philippines an anomaly in the East, a beacon of Christian faith amidst nations with different religious traditions. At this point, skeptics might argue that religious demographics alone aren't enough to establish a biblical connection. However, history tells a different story. In 1521, Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan arrived in the Philippines, bringing Christianity to the islands. This event wasn't just another moment of European expansion. It set the foundation for what would become the most devoutly Christian nation in Asia. Under Spanish rule, the Philippines saw the construction of thousands of churches, the establishment of Christian schools, and the widespread teaching of the faith. Even today, historical landmarks like San Agustin Church in Manila, one of the oldest stone churches in Asia, stand as a testament to the nation's deep-rooted faith. But here's where things get even more interesting. Unlike many former colonies where Christianity faded after independence, the Philippines only grew stronger in its religious convictions, while much of Europe saw a decline in church attendance. The Philippines remained steadfast. Why? Could this resilience be part of a larger, divine plan? To understand the full scope of this mystery, we have to look beyond the country itself. Today, there are over 10 million Filipinos working abroad. Nurses, engineers, caregivers, teachers, all carrying their faith with them. This Filipino diaspora is unlike any other. They don't just integrate into foreign cultures, they bring their Christian values and traditions. Often, they become the backbone of Catholic and Protestant churches worldwide. Take the United States as an example. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Houston, Filipino communities have become the lifeblood of local Catholic parishes. In the Middle East, where Christian practice is often restricted, Filipino workers quietly maintain underground prayer groups and Bible studies. Even the Vatican has recognized the impact of Filipino migrants in sustaining the global Christian faith. This phenomenon begs the question, is this just a coincidence, or could it be the fulfillment of a prophecy? Could it be that the Philippines, these so-called islands of the East, were destined to spread Christianity far beyond their shores? To put things into perspective, let's consider a modern analogy. Imagine if a small, seemingly insignificant tech startup, based in a garage in Silicon Valley, suddenly became one of the most influential companies in the world. Sounds familiar, right? This is exactly what happened with Apple. When Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started assembling computers in their parents' home, few would have guessed that their work would revolutionize global technology. Now, apply that same thinking to the Philippines. A small, distant nation, relatively unnoticed on the world stage, but possessing something invaluable: faith. And just like Apple disrupted the tech world, could the Philippines be disrupting the spiritual world, fulfilling a hidden biblical role? If we take this interpretation seriously, the implications are profound. It suggests that the rise of Christianity in the Philippines and the global influence of its people is not random. It suggests that the nation has a prophetic role yet to be fully realized. If you're skeptical, consider this. In a world where faith is often declining, the Philippines continues to stand strong. Despite economic struggles, political instability, and natural disasters, the nation remains resilient, unified under the banner of Christianity. Could it be that the trials the country faces are part of a greater test, one designed to prepare its people for an even greater mission? As the world becomes more divided, could the Philippines be a bridge, a unifying force spreading faith and hope? If Isaiah's prophecy truly points to these islands, then what we're witnessing today isn't just history unfolding, it's destiny in motion. And that leaves us with one final question. If the Philippines is indeed playing a divine role in the world, what is our responsibility in recognizing it? The mystery of Ophir has intrigued biblical scholars, historians, and explorers for centuries. Described in 1 Kings 10:22, Ophir was a land of unimaginable wealth, supplying King Solomon with gold, silver, ivory, peacocks, and other rare treasures. While the Bible offers clues, its exact location remains unknown. However, some researchers and historians believe that Ophir could be the Philippines, and the evidence is compelling. Long before Spanish colonization, the indigenous people of Luzon and Mindanao were mining and trading gold. When Ferdinand Magellan's fleet arrived in Cebu in 1521, he noted in his journals that the locals wore gold as part of their daily attire. This wasn't just an indication of wealth. It suggested an advanced civilization with an established gold industry. Further supporting this theory is the Surigao treasure, a collection of pre-colonial gold artifacts discovered in the Philippines. These items, crafted with remarkable sophistication, indicate a deep-rooted gold culture that closely resembles biblical descriptions of Ophir. Skeptics argue that the Philippines is too far from the Middle East for Solomon's ships to have reached. However, historical maritime routes prove otherwise. The Phoenicians, known as Solomon's shipbuilders, were master navigators with extensive trade networks spanning the Mediterranean, Africa, and the Indian Ocean. If their voyages reached as far as India, it is entirely plausible that they could have continued eastward, passing through the Strait of Malacca and into the Philippines. A compelling piece of evidence involves peacocks, one of the goods brought back from Ophir. Peacocks are native to Southeast Asia, particularly regions near the Philippines. This suggests that Ophir must have been in this part of the world. Additionally, modern satellite studies of ancient shipwrecks in the Indian Ocean indicate that early trade routes extended farther east than previously believed, reinforcing the possibility that Solomon's fleet reached the Philippines. However, beyond historical and geographical analysis, there is a deeper lesson in the story of Ophir. King Solomon, despite his vast wealth, ultimately saw his kingdom decline when he strayed from God. His life serves as a cautionary tale. No amount of gold can provide true fulfillment, only faith can. This brings us to an important question. What holds more value, gold or faith? The United States, home to powerful financial institutions like Wall Street, has experienced both economic booms and devastating crashes. Fortunes are made and lost overnight, and billionaires like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have publicly acknowledged that wealth alone does not guarantee happiness or purpose. If Solomon's story teaches anything, it's that material riches, no matter how vast, are fleeting. If the Philippines was once home to immense physical wealth, it may now possess something even greater, spiritual wealth. Today, over 10 million Filipinos work abroad, not just as laborers, but as ambassadors of faith. In the United States, Filipino nurses, caregivers, and professionals fill hospitals, churches, and communities, bringing not only their skills, but also their deep Christian values. Could it be that while the Philippines may no longer be the land of gold, it has transformed into something even more valuable? A nation that spreads faith, resilience, and hope wherever its people go. So is the Philippines really Ophir? Perhaps, but maybe the real revelation isn't about geography, it's about destiny. The true wealth of a nation isn't measured by its gold deposits, but by the strength of its faith and the impact of its people. King Solomon's story reminds us that gold fades, but a nation built on faith endures. If the Philippines is indeed the land once sought after for its riches, maybe, just maybe, it is now sought after for something far more eternal. The world often sees battles as conflicts between nations, ideologies, or political factions. But the Bible speaks of a different kind of battle, one that takes place beyond the realm of flesh and blood. Ephesians 6:12 states, "For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." This verse suggests that beyond wars, corruption, and disasters, a deeper struggle exists, one that affects entire nations. If that is true, could the Philippines be on the front lines of this spiritual war? When we think about nations deeply tied to Christianity, the United States often comes to mind, with its history of religious freedom and Christian foundations. But what if the real spiritual battleground is not in the West, but in the East, specifically in the Philippines? This small archipelago of over 7,000 islands stands as the largest Christian nation in Asia, surrounded by countries where Buddhism, Islam, and secularism dominate. The Philippines is not just holding on to its faith, it is actively spreading Christianity worldwide. Could this make it a key player in a spiritual war that many do not even realize is happening? The Philippines is no stranger to suffering. Natural disasters strike with terrifying frequency: earthquakes, typhoons, volcanic eruptions, and floods. Yet the resilience of its people is unshaken. The world witnessed this firsthand during Super Typhoon Haiyan, Yolanda, in 2013, one of the most powerful tropical cyclones ever recorded. The storm obliterated entire cities, leaving thousands dead and millions displaced. Yet in the aftermath of the destruction, something extraordinary happened. Amid the wreckage, Filipinos were seen kneeling in prayer, their voices rising in unison, thanking God for sparing their lives. Churches became shelters, and instead of turning away from their faith, people clung to it even tighter. Compare this to how many in the West react to hardship. When tragedies strike, faith is often questioned rather than reinforced. In America, after every major crisis, whether it be 9/11, financial collapses, or the COVID-19 pandemic, there is always a public debate about the existence of God and why suffering occurs. Meanwhile, Filipinos, despite living in one of the most disaster-prone nations on earth, continue to thank God rather than blame Him. What makes them different? Could it be that they understand something that much of the world has forgotten? Unlike the US, where Christianity is widespread but often taken for granted, the Philippines is an island of faith in a sea of religious and ideological opposition. To the west, it faces the rise of Islam in nations like Malaysia and Indonesia. To the north, China grows more authoritarian, cracking down on Christian worship and replacing churches with state-controlled institutions. To the east, secularism is sweeping across Japan and South Korea, where younger generations are rapidly abandoning religion. Yet the Philippines remains steadfast, holding on to Christianity with a conviction that defies global trends. Why hasn't it succumbed to the same forces that have led to the decline of Christianity in other parts of the world? This resistance to spiritual erosion is nothing short of remarkable. It suggests that there is something uniquely resilient about the Filipino faith, something that has been shaped by centuries of trials and persecution. While many nations send out official missionaries, the Philippines has been sending out something even more powerful. Millions of faithful believers embedded into every corner of the world. There are over 10 million Filipinos working abroad, and wherever they go, they take their faith with them. Take the United States as an example. In cities like Los Angeles, New York, and Houston, Filipino nurses and caregivers are known for their kindness, compassion, and faith. They pray with patience, offer encouragement, and bring a sense of spiritual warmth to healthcare settings. In Saudi Arabia and the Middle East, where Christianity is heavily restricted, Filipino workers secretly hold Bible studies and underground church services. Despite the risks, they continue to share their faith in some of the most spiritually oppressive environments in the world. Could this be a fulfillment of prophecy? The Bible speaks of the gospel being spread to all nations before the end times. What if the Philippines is playing a critical role in this mission without even realizing it? The Philippines is not a rich country by worldly standards. It does not possess the military power of the United States, the technological dominance of China, or the economic influence of Europe. And yet it is doing something no superpower has been able to accomplish, bringing faith into the hearts of millions, not through force, politics, or media influence, but through everyday people living out their beliefs. If we step back and look at the bigger picture, the Philippines' role in the world is too significant to be ignored. A country that has endured colonial rule, wars, poverty, and countless disasters should not, by any logical standard, still be one of the most devout Christian nations on earth. And yet it is. Why? Perhaps, as Ephesians 6:12 suggests, this is not just about history, culture, or geography. Perhaps the Philippines is engaged in a battle far greater than what can be seen with the human eye. If the Philippines is truly playing a divine role in this unseen war, then what happens next? Will it continue to stand firm in its faith, or will external pressures erode its spiritual foundation? Will it remain a beacon of Christianity, or will it follow the path of so many other nations that once had strong faith but have now drifted away? The Philippines' resilience suggests that this is no accident. There is a purpose behind its struggles, a reason for its faith, and a mission yet to be fulfilled. The only question is, will the world recognize it before it's too late? The global mission of the Philippines, a city on a hill. When Jesus said in Matthew 5:14, "You are the light of the world," a city on a hill cannot be hidden. He was calling his followers to stand out, to be beacons of faith in a darkened world. But what if this verse applies not just to individuals, but to entire nations? Could it be that the Philippines, a small island nation often overlooked on the global stage, is playing an outsized role in spreading the light of Christianity? While the world focuses on superpowers like the US, China, and Russia, perhaps something remarkable is happening quietly, through the unwavering faith of millions of Filipinos who carry their beliefs wherever they go. Few countries have such a global spiritual footprint as the Philippines. More than 10 million Filipinos work abroad, not just as professionals, but as missionaries in disguise. Whether they are nurses, engineers, teachers, or domestic workers, they bring their faith with them, often influencing the communities around them in ways that go beyond their job descriptions. In hospitals across Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago, Filipino nurses are known not just for their skill and compassion, but for their habit of praying with patients, sharing words of encouragement, and playing worship music during difficult moments. Could it be that God has placed them in these roles for more than just economic survival? Even in places where Christianity is suppressed, Filipinos continue to spread the gospel quietly and fearlessly. In countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE, where open evangelism is prohibited, many Filipino workers secretly hold Bible studies and underground prayer meetings. Stories have surfaced of Filipinos leading Muslim co-workers to Christ, even in the face of great personal risk. Why is this happening? Why are Filipinos, more than any other nationality, carrying the torch of faith into these spiritually dark places? One could argue that the Philippines' unique historical and cultural DNA has prepared it for this role. Unlike much of the Western world, where faith is often privatized and intellectualized, Filipinos embrace a deeply communal, heart-driven spirituality. This is a country where faith is not just a belief system. It is a way of life. People pray together in public transport, hold massive prayer rallies, and openly express their trust in God. This raw, unfiltered Christianity is what makes Filipino faith contagious. But there's something else happening beneath the surface, something deeper that should make us pause. While Christianity in the US and Europe is declining, the Philippines remains a stronghold of faith. Churches in America are closing at an alarming rate. A 2023 Pew Research study found that Christianity in the US is shrinking, with more young people identifying as religiously unaffiliated. Yet, in the Philippines, churches are overflowing. Young people are still embracing faith, and mega-churches like Victory Christian Fellowship and Jesus is Lord Church are seeing explosive growth. Why is one nation losing its faith, while another, much smaller country, is holding the line? This contrast brings us back to the idea of a city on a hill. Could it be that, in an era where faith is fading in the West, God is using the Philippines to rekindle the fire? Just as the US was once seen as the great missionary-sending nation, perhaps the mantle is shifting. And if so, what does this mean for the future of global Christianity? History has shown that nations rise and fall, but the work of God never stops. The Roman Empire once carried the gospel, then it faded. Europe was the heartbeat of Christianity during the Reformation, but today, many of its grand cathedrals are empty. The US led the charge in global missions in the 20th century, but now its churches are struggling. Is it possible that God is now using the Philippines as the next great missionary force? Filipinos are not just working abroad to send money home. They are sent out as light bearers in a dark world. They are bringing hope to the suffering, faith to the lost, and truth to those seeking meaning. And what's even more fascinating is that this is happening organically. There is no grand strategy, no government program funding it. This is a movement happening through ordinary people, fueled by an extraordinary God. The Philippines may not have military power like America, technological dominance like China, or economic influence like Europe. But it has something else, a spiritual mission that cannot be measured in dollars or political strength. And if history has taught us anything, it's that God often works through the unexpected. He chose David, a shepherd boy, over kings. He used fishermen to change the world. And now he may be using the Philippines, this city on a hill in the east, to bring light to a world desperately in need of it. So if the Philippines is fulfilling a divine mission, what does that mean for the rest of us? Could it be that God is also calling you to be part of this movement? The question is no longer whether the Philippines is playing a role in God's plan. The real question is, will you recognize it and take part in it?